I didn't know that we had so many Baptists and Mennonites in this school. Baptists and Mennonites always sit at the back of the church. Have you noticed that? And so you guys are all in the back and all this great space in front, but I'm going to talk anyway, and I'll talk louder so you can all hear me. It's great to have you all here. How many of you are freshmen? Oh, all right. Congratulations. Would you all give them a hand that aren't freshmen? They made it. Thank you for coming. We're honored that you're here. We're glad that you're here, and we hope that you have just a wonderful experience. Where are the sophomores? Any sophomores in here? Man, you know, this is a tough year. You just made it. You're no longer a freshman. That's the good news. The bad news is you got 3 more to go. And then you're out of here. So just wanting to know how much we appreciate you, and we're glad that you made it back. How about the juniors? Any juniors in here? Yeah, okay. You're over the hill. You know, from here, it's one more year, and then another one, and then you're out of here. But it's actually, you know, it's starting to get good. All major courses and those kind of things. And the seniors. Any seniors? Oh, you came to chapel. I am so proud of you. Thank you for coming. Yes, this is it, man. This year, this semester, one more, and you're ready to fly, right? Congratulations. We're glad you're here. Now, I'd like you all to take out your cell phones. I know you're not supposed to do this in class, but when I speak, you can take out your cell phones. And here's my cell phone number. I'd like you to send me a text. And I'd like you to answer, put in the text your first and last name, and then one word or phrase, text me the answer to this question. How's it going so far? Not quite a week, about a half a week they've been involved here at Tabor. But just tell me, how's it going this year? What's happening? So your first and last name, and then I don't want an essay. I just want, tell me in one word or one phrase, it's going good, it's going terrible, whatever the case might be, and let me know how it is and send me the text. Now, I looked at some of the other ones, and some of your classmates in the first chapel, they don't know which name is their first name. Because they had it mixed up, they put their last name, then they put their first name. And I know these kids, and so show that you're smarter than them. Just thought I'd give you that as a hint. A couple of them put these long essays, so they're just not listening. I think it's the freshmen. I'm not sure. So I'm just giving you a heads up. First name, last name, and although, by the way, if I don't do social media except I do Twitter, and so if you want to follow me at Pres Glanzer, I don't follow students for the most part, but I like to let them know about things that are happening, and so and if you want to hear about Tabor College from a president's perspective, you can. I have 900 followers, so that's not very many, but that's a whole lot more than a lot of my president friends have, and so I'm trying to get to 1,000 so I can brag to them. So if you help me get to 1,000 followers, that would be just really great, but if you don't, that's okay too. I won't hold it against you. I want to talk about my story today. I'm going to tell you my story and some of the things that have happened in my life with the goal of helping you begin to understand your story and inspire it to intersect with his story. All of us have a story. You have a story. You could tell me all the different kind of things that have happened. And if you and I would sit down and talk, and you would tell me some of your story, and then make meaning to it, and how does it prepare you for the next phase of your life, all of that is important. All of us have a story, and all of it is kind of a God-shaped story. And so when we look at our stories, and right now you're starting a new story. Your Tabor College experience is kind of one chapter in your story. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my story. And it goes something like this. I was forced to go to high school. I hated school. In my 7th and 8th grade, when I was in the 7th and 8th grade, I had a teacher that just abused us. I mean, he would put his hand like this, and if you weren't behaving, and that was often the case in my case, he'd come along, he'd whack us over the back of our head and hit us right here. And then sometimes we'd duck, and then he'd just pretend like he was scratching himself to make us feel foolish. Sometimes he'd come up and he'd crack us on the side of our jaw. One time, the girl in front of me I don't know what she was doing, but she wasn't doing anything too bad as far as I was concerned. And we had this carom stick in the room, which is kind of a long dowel stick. And he came in and he just plopped it on her head, and the stick just broke. Now, back then, abuse wasn't, we didn't talk about that. And we kind of lived in an era that, you must have misbehaved, therefore you got it. And if you come home and tell us what happened, you're going to get it again. So we just didn't do that. That was my experience. I cried. Don't make me go to high school. I just want to farm. That's all I want to do. Dad, Mom, please don't make me go to high school. Go at least 2 years. So I agreed, and I remember getting on the bus and going for 2 years to high school. And I got there, and there was this one math teacher. I walked into his classroom. It was for algebra in my sophomore year. And he got up and he said, "The following students I don't want in this class." And I was one of them. So I left and went down to the principal's office. I said, "What am I supposed to do?" He said, "Well, why don't you go into these other classes?" And so I started taking business classes, accounting, typing, public speaking, the kind of things I do every day now. I started learning those in high school already. And I kind of started liking school then already. This same math teacher, the way he disciplined us was he would grab this muscle right here coming across, that nerve, and he just cramped down on it. Oh, it hurt. It just cramped down. And this summer, I was home in South Dakota. I was visiting my Aunt Mary. I was waiting in the waiting room to see her, and all of a sudden this guy walks into the waiting room. And my aunt comes out, and she says, "Oh, do you maybe know Mr. Cheddar?" And all of a sudden it hit me. This was the guy that had mistreated me all those times. So I actually started talking with him, and I said, "Hey, do you remember?" "Oh, yeah." And he was proud about how he had treated us. And one of the things I learned in that encounter is that I had forgiven him already. That I could look him in the eye, and I knew that I had forgiven him for all the things that he had done to us. Not to say that I didn't deserve him, but I still had to forgive him for what he had done. Well, so I ended up finishing high school, and I thought, well, now I'm done with school. I can stay home and I can farm. And my parents said, "Nah, go at least to college 1 year. Just go 1 year. You need to get away from home, and you need that experience of kind of being on your own, and you need to learn some things." And I'm sure I did. "Why don't you just go?" And so I said, "Okay, where should I go?" "Well, we think you should go to Tabor College." That's right. My parents picked where I should go to college. And so I'd never been here, and so I got in the car and came down and moved into the dorm and went to college. When I moved and my mom was putting my stuff away in my dorm, all of a sudden she stopped, she looked at me, and she said, "Jules, this room is nicer than the one you have at home." I was in lower Oklahoma. And that was the situation that I was in. So I came to college, and while I was here, I was in this group called The Commitment. And after 1 year, I had such a good time, and I was enjoying it so much, I said, well, I'll just go another year, and then another, and I ended up going all 4 years here to Tabor. While I was here, I was in this group called Commitment. We would go out and sing, and we would represent the school at a variety of different places and conferences. And one of the conferences was Probe 72 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was called a Congress on Evangelism, and it was all different Mennonite groups that had come together. During that session, there was a speaker who talked about these three men. As I read in history later on, they were Felix Mons, Conrad Grable, and John Blaurock, I think was his first name. And they were young men in their 20s, and because they stood up for their faith, they were taken out, put in a boat, taken out into the river, rocks hung around their neck, and thrown into the river and drowned. On the body of one of them, when they recovered the bodies, was a map, a strategy to evangelize the world for Jesus. I remember thinking to myself and saying, oh, they'd never find anything like that in my body. And it was like this voice from outside. It was not an audible voice. It was all in my head. But there was just like this invading thought that said, Jules, do I have all of you? And I just kind of chuckled and said, no, you don't. And that thought, the next thought or voice or whatever it was said, but I want to. And my response was, okay, you can have me. I had no idea what was really happening there or what I was doing. All I can tell you is that changed the trajectory of my life, and something different began to happen for me. And I realized that I had been forced to go to high school. I had been enticed to go to college. And now I recognize the need that I need to go to seminary, because there was this inner kind of stirring and calling and external calling as well that asked that I should go into some kind of vocational ministry. And so I went to seminary, and then later on I realized I had this hunger to learn more, and ended up getting my doctorate from Fuller Theological Seminary. All that education, though, I ended up in Houston, Texas. Now, Houston is just a little bit different than Hillsboro. 4 million people, 4,000 people. How many of you come from a big city? Anybody? I feel your pain. You know, about the only thing these two have in common is that they both start with H. After that, Hillsboro is known for sausage. Houston is known for all kinds of things. I mean, I remember moving from there, coming here, and our neighborhood was a United Nations neighborhood. Our son was the only white boy in the basketball team. And then we came to Hillsboro, Kansas, and man, this place is white. Have you noticed that? You probably have. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like monoculture instead of multiculture, which is what we were used to. And so there was this big difference. And while I was in Houston, I actually got a pink slip. The group that I was working with said, we don't want to do this anymore, and I was without a job. In Houston, Texas, you can find all kinds of jobs if you want, and so I did, but at the same time, we worked to start a church, and we did it for 19 years. We lived there. That was home for us. Between Houston and Hillsboro, we lived in Portland, Oregon for 6.5 years, where I served as the dean of the seminary at George Fox University. One day, while I was at my desk, the phone rang, and the person at the other end of the line, well, actually, my administrative assistant came in and said, there's someone on the line that wants to talk to you. And I said, what do they want? And she said, well, I don't know. I forgot to ask. I'm sorry. And I said, well, put him through. It sounds like a name that I should know, but I really don't know who it is. And so he came through, and he said, well, I'm David Wiebe. I'm calling from Tabor College, and I'm sure you know why I'm calling. And I go, I have no idea. And he said, well, we'd like to talk to you about serving as president of Tabor College. One thing led to another, and suddenly I found myself being inaugurated as the president of Tabor College. I have to tell you, that was never on my career path. That was never in my plan. It was never my dream. I'm a visionary kind of a person. I live in the future. I solve problems by going into the future and thinking back. That's just who I am. I'm always thinking about the future. This had never been on my radar screen. It never had been in any of the pictures, in any of the slides that I had seen with my mind's eye. And here I was, serving in this role. I tell you all that to say, and here's the point: live a God-arranged life. What I realized at that point, as I thought back through all my life and preparing for this, that all the different kind of experiences in my story had prepared me for such a time as this, and I didn't even know it. And so living a God-arranged life, you never know where it's going to take you. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what is next ahead of you. You don't see the end. And that's okay. Live your life the way you're living it now, with a God-arranged view, listening to what He is. What is it that He's calling me to do? How does He see the world? Can I see it the way He sees it? Have the courage to do what He asks you to do, and do it in love. And you live a God-arranged life. The alternative, a self-arranged life. You can live life yourself. You can make sure that you do everything you want to do just the way you want to do and make it happen the way you want to. And I have to just tell you that usually doesn't work. There have been periods in my life where I've tried to do that, and it didn't go that well. And so I want to encourage you, as you think about your story, do you want to live a self-arranged life, or do you want to live a God-arranged life? Through all this, at one point in the process, I decided to put my life mission together in just a sentence. And this is a sentence: I desire to honor and trust God with my life by being a person of influence. inspiring, impacting with relevance and integrity the lives of those who will influence others. Or in other words, influencing those who will influence others, the short version of that. And that's what my whole life has been. I have an image statement as well. And if you come to my office, you see this hanging in my office. You see a ship that's underneath it as well. And it's all, I see myself, and always have for all my adult life, been kind of in charge of steering some kind of an organization. And that's how I see myself, as I'm a person in charge of some kind of a group, a stewardship that's been placed in my hands, and I'm supposed to steer this. This past summer, we were in Orcas Island visiting friends and alumni and in the great Northwest there, and we went whale watching, and I met Captain Dan. It was amazing how he would steer his boat, and I went in and spent quite a bit of time with him in his cabin, and what he would do. He had like 4 radios, and they all were blaring at him, and he could have picked it all out. And I thought, man, that's just like my life as a president. I always got people telling me what to do and where to go and how I'm supposed to be. And then he'd pick up the glasses, the binoculars, and look out, and he would see something. And we drove into the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden there was a whale. I mean, I thought, how did this guy know that? But his experience, and I said, yeah, that's kind of how I'm supposed to be living my life as well. This is one of the most important people in my life. This is my grandma, Grandma Mendel. I still, always when I talk of her, fight back tears because of how important she was to my life. When I go to South Dakota, I still go to her grave to honor her and to respect her. For the first 11 years of my life, she lived with me. She lived in our home, and she just had this huge impact on my life. I remember when I was 9 years old, the church that we were attending out in the country, they brought a speaker in, and every night for a whole week, this person would speak and talk about the Bible and about Jesus and about how to have a relationship with him. And one night, on a Thursday night, I'd been pretty naughty that day, and actually I had to sit with my parents. I couldn't sit with my friends up in front. I don't know what that was about, but it meant that I hadn't been good the night before probably. And although I remember that he talked about hell, and he kind of scared it out of me. I got afraid. And he said, anybody who doesn't want to go to hell and want to go to heaven, you come forward. I'll try to ask Jesus into your heart. And that sounded really good to me at that point. And so I walked forward and asked Jesus into my heart. Grandma hadn't gone to church that night, and I think she was probably in the beginning of her final illness at that point, as I think back. Anyway, I ran into the room, woke up, and Grandma, guess what? I asked Jesus into my heart. And Grandma, who was a heavy-set German lady, woke up, got up, sat on the side of the bed, took a doily on the side of her bed nightstand, put it on her head because Grandma never prayed without a hair covering, made me kneel down in front of her, laid her hands on me, and prayed. I don't know what she prayed, but there's this inner kind of a conviction that what she prayed is still being answered to this very day. There's this connection in my soul that says, whatever she prayed, it's still going on to this very day. This is my parents and my brother. I'm in the top picture in the back, and in the bottom picture I'm on the right hand, or on your right. I'm wearing the choir tux of my freshman year in college, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a tux. That's their 25th wedding anniversary. My mom and dad farmed all their life, and they always talked about someday. They didn't talk about a bucket list, but it was the one thing they had on their bucket list, that they would get rid of all the day-to-day chores in a farm and just have the land and farm that, and then they would start traveling, and they would see the world. And about the time that happened, Mom died. They had literally lived their entire life waiting for something to happen that they could do, and then it couldn't happen because her life was over. This is the farm that I grew up on. This is where we lived. This was the homestead. A beautiful place, a nice place to grow up, hardworking, good values. If you go back there now, this is what it looks like. It's all destroyed. It's all gone. It's not there anymore. I show you both of those pictures, or all those pictures, to tell you this. All of that in my story has given me that I live with this sense of there and now. On the one hand, I want to live my life in such a way that it is bringing the values and the vision of heaven here into the temporal. And I want to live this. I want to capture every moment. I want to live it to the fullest. I want to make the world more the way God intended it to be. But I always do it with a view to the other realm, to the realm that we call heaven. And that what I do now somehow changes the face of heaven and somehow makes a difference in heaven. And there's this tension between those two, here or now and there. And that's a part of kind of who I am. I want to install the eternal values now, and I want to live in such a way as to change the face of heaven. And I say all that to say that heaven is for real. And my story is all about living not only for today, but living for eternity. And I encourage you to make that a part of your story as well. One final thing about my story, and that is that I decided very early on that Jesus was going to be a part of my story. And when he said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life, what I realized then was that he is my path. He is the path that I walk on, and he is the truth. He is the difference between us and all other religions in the world, and he is life. He not only gives life, he not only sustains it, he not only takes it, he is life. And so I want my story to intersect with him. So what's your story? What will your next chapter look like? While you're at Tabor, you're writing another story. And God's going to use all those things, and in his sovereign way, he kind of makes them and puts them together, and how you write that story is kind of up to you. How you respond to all those things that happen, it's up to you. And I want to encourage you to think about these three things. That you would, as part of your story, live a God-arranged life. Make that a part of your decision. I want my story to be God-arranged. And to live with a sense of eternal purpose. It's not only about now, but it's about what are you paying forward. And then finally, would you consider including Jesus in your story? I encourage you to think about those as you think about your story. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. Lord Jesus, I ask your blessing each person in this room. As they think about their stories, you have shaped them and molded them to be the people you've called them to be. And may you shape their stories in such a way that they bring honor to you and that your world will be more the way you intended it to be. In your name I pray. Amen.